What's up, everybody in the land of the free? Happy 4th of July week. I hope you're celebrating in the most American way you know how, with tons of fireworks, probably tons of beer, and some great cookout food. And all 4th of July reminds me of is the fact that the most American sport of all time is football, American football. And it's almost back, baby. We're just a couple weeks out. Preseason starts in August for all you degenerates like us. And then
less than 10 Sundays to go.
Yeah. Scott Hansen has me like freaking out every Sunday. I see the tweet and I'm like, woo, give me the Octobox. But as we approach the season, we're still doing our division dissection. We were off last week on a little bit of a hiatus. So this week we're doing AFC South and West. And then we'll get into the NFC starting next week. So, but yeah, I don't feel like there's a ton of news going around right now. Training camp starts. Obviously, the Brandon Ayuk saga continues. Do you guys have any pressing news you want to talk about before we get started?
Not really.
We're
in the dead zone.
All right. Well, then let's do it. We're starting with the AFC South. Like always, we're going to do our projections for the team, our most polarizing player and why. One hot take we have for that team regarding a player or the team overall, and then what we think the best game on the schedule is. So, and Nolan's here. I want to take a moment. One of our hosts, Shane, just kind of had to step away for some family things. We totally get that. We're super supportive. He's been a great addition to the show over the last couple of years. So, shout out to him. Show him some love. We're going to miss Shane a ton. Nothing but respect for that guy. He's one of the crew. And Nolan is our new addition here, so you're going to see him as a regular face moving forward. So tell them what's good, Noel. Tell them what they can expect from you.
You can expect me to probably upset you with some of the things I'm going to say, and some of my hot takes. And that's what we're here for, is to maybe angry the average fan or to make them happy or make their brain turn a little bit. So that's what I'm here for. I'm excited to be on the show a lot more moving forward. And thank you guys for bringing me on.
Sure.
Dude, we tried to replace the Cowboys fan and ended up getting another Cowboys fan. God damn it.
You're like a hybrid. You do Chiefs too, right?
Yeah, he's a hybrid Chiefs guy, which makes
That's the most hated
worse.
band in America right there. We brought him in.
Giving us a little bit of that barbecue flavor.
I could pull this number right here and just wear this. Pop it off.
You have to get one that's like split logo, like half Cowboys, half Chiefs.
Might have to.
That would be fine.
All right, let's get into it, boys. AFC South is what we're going to start with. We're gonna lead off with the Colts. So Nolan, in honor of this being, I think, your first official week as a host, right? Not a fill-in. Why don't you go ahead and go first with the Colts and let us know what you think's up with them?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's start off with some fire here. Well, maybe not too much. Maybe a small flame. 9-8 is what I'm going with for the record. For the Indianapolis Colts. I definitely think they have the pieces to move ahead and still win quite a bit of games, but also lose just about as many games as they win. As far as most polarizing player, I do have Michael Pittman Jr. It's a little bit different. Normally I would say Jonathan Taylor, but I'm going MPJ here just because he's coming off of this big contract that he signed over the offseason. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to be wide receiver one. They gave him the money to do that. And if he doesn't do that, well, you're going to piss off a lot of Colts fans, and they're going to want you out of town, even though he's there for a while for a lot of money. So MPJ there. And my hot take, I actually have Anthony Richardson winning comeback player of the year with a 1K passing, 1K rushing type season. And really just kind of breaking the fold that he is maybe not worth it in Indianapolis and showing that he is. And then as far as my best game, I'm going to have to say Indy versus Houston in week 8. I think that'll be a big-time matchup. That could shake up the division. If Houston is looking good at the top of the division, Indy would have a chance to kind of shake things out a bit and get Houston a little nervous for later in the season. So 9-8 Colts, Michael Pittman Jr., Anthony Richardson, comeback player of the year, and week 8 versus Houston.
I'll go next. I also have the Colts going 9-8. Just pretty much like exactly how you said. They made improvements, but at the same time, like I don't see them winning a ton more games than they lose. I do see it being a winning season. But I don't know. I don't feel like I trust their defense, which is typically good, but like I don't see like a superstar player on that defense at all. It's just like one of those teams that has a sum better than their parts, but that can only take you so far in today's NFL. My polarizing player was Jonathan Taylor. He had a season where he had 1,800 yards. I believe is 1,800 yards rushing. I think it is. 1 second. Let me just stat check this real quick. I was doing his player prediction the other day, and I saw what his RB1 overall season looked like. And if they can get that player back again, like this dude's a problem. Yeah, 1,811 yards rushing on 332 attempts, and he still had 5.5 yards per attempt on 332 attempts. They're getting that type of running.
How many years ago was that now? 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was in 2021, his second season. Then he dealt with injuries over the last 2 seasons. So
yeah, of course.
We have he's a running back. He deals with injuries, but like if we're gonna see a full season with him and Anthony Richardson in the backfield, like he had 18 touchdowns too that year, 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, an offense that wasn't as good as this one could be, with a worse system too. I feel like the read option system is going to be a problem for defenses with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. My hot take is Anthony Richardson rushes for over 700 yards and has 35 total touchdowns. So 22, 23 in the air, and then about 12 rushing. So 35 total with over 700 yards rushing. The passing yards was around 4,000, I believe I had it statted out. So that's a massive season for him. I think that he would definitely win comeback player of the year if those are the numbers he's putting up. Best game of the year is Indy versus Miami in Week 7 because I see this Shane Steichen offense and like a lot of things about it excite me. Even when when it was Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss and not Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, who are just leagues better than both of those players, or at least more explosive and you can do more with in the proper system. I see this Indy offense kind of mirroring what Philly looked like when Steichen was there, and this Miami offense is explosive and electric as well. So I think this is going to be like a high scoring, like one of those games. Like, oh, you look back at it, and that was like a barn burner. Like Miami might win this 38-35, and like I remember, wow, that was a football game. So yeah, that's my Colts.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right here with you guys on this stuff. And yeah, 9-8 was the record I landed on. It was kind of tough picking out like some of these games. Like I was kind of going through game by game, and I kind of figure like there's a lot of like tweener kind of games on this schedule. I feel like they could kind of go either way. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order here. One of the games that the one that I chose as my best game was the Week 4 game against Pittsburgh. I thought like that's early in the season. Those are like two teams that like could be good, could be bad. We don't really know what to make of them, especially like early in the year. I feel like, that's like one of those games you really want to get like for your confidence as a young team. So I feel like that was one that just like I as a neutral, I'd be excited to see it. Most polarizing player. I like the one that you chose, Nolan. I was thinking about Michael Pittman, because what is kind of the identity of this receiving core now? You got Josh Downs coming on as the young guy, and Anthony Richardson is still basically a rookie. He's been there, but he's played 4 or 5 games. So they're all all the receivers are kind of starting at square one, and so Michael Pittman does have to step forward. But with that being said, Tyler alluded to the kind of player Jonathan Taylor was 3 years ago, and he has not been that yet. I'm not writing him off. Me and Tyler got to see him play when we were in college against USF, and I have PTSD from that game, and I remember that guy's special. But we're not talking about him as RB1 anymore. We're talking about Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall as RB1 right now, and Jonathan Taylor has to do something about that. If he's going, he has to. That's it. So my hot take, I think that I view this team as like one of those. This is going to be one of those last teams out of the playoffs. I feel like they could be maybe one win away. I said that was my hot take. Was maybe if this team was able to get to 10 wins, maybe they could get that 7th seed and squeak into the playoffs. I think it's hard for me to pick them to do that ahead of right now. My 3 wild card teams are Ravens, Chargers, Jets, and I couldn't put the Colts ahead of any of those teams, at least right now. But I think that this team will at least split with Houston, who I think is going to win the division here. And I have getting the 2 seed. And I think that's pretty much their ceiling, and maybe they get that 7 seed, and we get to see a third iteration of Texans Colts in the wild card, but that's probably unlikely. But that's kind of my hot take.
So everybody knows I'm a Texans fan, so my AFC South bias is about to shine. I have the Colts going 8-9. I'm 1 game off of you guys. I wouldn't be shocked to see a 9-8. This team always wins games it shouldn't win and loses games it shouldn't lose. I expect that trend to continue. My biggest thing about their record is they didn't address the secondary. Yes, you address the pass rush. I think their biggest issue with pass rush is development. I'll get into that in a second, but no secondary help, already camp injuries. I just think they're going to get diced up in the back end this year, and they're going to be in a shootout every game pretty much. My most polarizing player is Kwity Paye. I'm taking a bit of a different direction here, but this is a dude they put first-round capital in a couple years ago. He was supposed to be really good coming out of college. He kind of slipped on the draft a little bit. They just drafted your replacement, so you have to go do something now, right? This whole defensive line unit has something to prove. I don't think you can put all of this on Latu to stay healthy and carry this defensive line and generate pressure in one of the best young QB divisions in the league. I think Kwity Paye is on the hot seat and is very much not a re-sign candidate for them next year, which is sad considering where he went. My hot take is Anthony Richardson throws the most interceptions in the league by a wide margin. I mean, close to 30. And I still think he has a phenomenal season. That's my hot take. I think he has a gunslinger type mentality. I think he has some problems throwing the ball maybe too hard in certain situations, with too much gas, that I think is just going to lead to natural interceptions. A lot, I think, will come against linebackers in the league. But I still think he has a great season. I think he's, comeback player of the year does not feel out of reach to me. And the best game on the schedule, it's just so hard to predict and pick out of division for me, but I'm going to go Colts Packers as my game to watch. I think that'll be an offensive fireworks show for everybody who chooses to watch that one. And then we'll jump into the Texans, and I'll lead off with this one, and then we'll go back around. So for the Texans, I've got them going 12-5 this year. I think they went 10-6 or 9, I think they went 10-6 last year. So I don't think winning 2 more games, 10-7 last year. I don't think winning 2 more games is out of the question, especially with some of the key pieces that they've upgraded. I have some depth concerns with this team, especially in the linebacker room, that I'm a little nervous about. My most polarizing player is Titus Howard. I went a really weird direction here, but they paid him top end market right tackle money. He slid to left guard a couple years now. He doesn't play well at guard. He's statistically one of the worst left guards in the league. He's not a great run blocker on the inside. I think he's one of the best right tackles in the league when healthy on the outside. So hopefully they leave him there and let him play where he's good at playing. And hopefully this unit gels a little bit. I saw PFF publish their top 10 offensive lines in the AFC, and the Texans were not on it. I think they have to change that perception heavily going into this year if they want to be considered true contenders. My hot take, I don't know if this is that hot of a take, but I think the Texans become the next team to have 3 1,000-yard receivers. I think CJ deals this ball enough to do it. I think Dalton Schultz has a pretty bad year just because of how much competition he has. And I think these receivers absolutely eat. And then best game on the schedule, it's hard to pick one. I'm going to go with the Bills game. I think that's going to be a really good, I love a good revenge game. That's my shtick. But this is good team versus good team, young team versus young team, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Circled on my calendar. I'm sure the same for Bahookie.
Yeah, go for it, Bahookie. You went third last time. Go second this time.
Yeah, so I kind of already foreshadowed my hot take, so I'll finish that one out first. With the Texans getting the 2 seed, and I've also kind of alluded to my plans earlier, and this is also going to allude to what I've got later for the Chiefs. But I've got Kansas City beating the Chiefs, or the Texans beating Kansas City is what I meant to say in the divisional round. I think that that turns out to be the 2-3 matchup. And so best game. I was looking at the Texans schedule here, and I like the first part of the schedule a lot. Honestly, I see this team starting out hot and doing what the Bills have done a lot in recent years, where they start hot and then have a midseason slump and then kick it back up and going into the playoffs. I feel like that's very, like, looking at this schedule, I feel like that's very much like the kind of year that could be on the table for the Texans. Like, they could really start out hot, and like that hype that's kind of from outside, it kind of feeds in and people start to believe it. And then the game that I had circled, which I think I've, like, as we do these, like, more like which game really sticks out, I have at Green Bay week 7 in October. I feel like that, like, Green Bay is like just a good, like, really, like, especially if you have to go to Lambeau, is a really good kind of like team to kind of see where you're at. Then I feel like the Texans and Packers are kind of like on a similar trajectory right now with their young quarterbacks and really rapidly rising. Most polarizing player, Stephon Diggs is the easy one for me to say, just because he's going into this receiving room and we're not sure, but Louie's like, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. But the guy who I'm really who I can't decide if I like or not, so that's why I chose him, is Jalen Petrie, your safety. He's like he really shows up, and then really, like, will also have games where he does absolutely nothing. And as a defensive back, you got to be consistent. One bad play and there's the game. And so yeah, with record, I had him at 13-4. I had the Bengals at 14-3 with the 1 seed, and I have the Texans at 13-4. I think that's probably good enough to get the 2 seed. Could maybe get it at 12-5 in the AFC, but that's kind of where I'm projecting them right now.
Word. So yeah, I was looking at the schedule, and I see a 10-7 season. They have a tough schedule. They have the first place schedule in their.
It's the biggest step up in strength of schedule for any team from last year to this year. So it's going to be They also added to, like, every part. I was going through looking at their roster, like, their defensive line, bro, is really frightening.
Yeah. No, they did. They made big swings at nearly every important position and had a good draft. So I do think, though, that just like the step up in competition, and now everybody has expectations. Expectations aren't the easiest thing to be dealing with. It's not a bad season. I have them and the Jags tied for 10-7. I have the Texans beating them out in tiebreakers because of their strength of schedule. I think those teams do split as well this season. It's hard to beat your divisional team, like to win all your divisional games. It's hard.
True, yeah.
My most polarizing player is Derek Stingley, because, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, they make a huge splash in the secondary. They have good players in the secondary, but Stingley was drafted to be like where Sauce Gardner is looked at. Like I don't necessarily see a massive discrepancy in their talent, but I feel like most of the NFL wouldn't put Stingley in that class. So I foresee a big year from him to be able to. Sorry, my dog's fucking grabbing shit.
Everywhere, yeah, it's always good for one.
Yeah, he's being a crazy dog. So yeah, I think he needs to have a season that he shuts everybody up that might be talking about him, and that's why. Because I think he's clearly one of the most talented cornerbacks in the league. He just needs to put it together for a full, consistent season without being injured.
Yeah. We saw the spark. Yeah. He had like 5 interceptions in 4 games, and I was like, this is it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's happening.
I just need to see it through like a full 17-game schedule. And then that defense is dangerous. Like you said, gross on defensive line and to have Stingley and Petrie kind of in your back end as 2 key players, like it's going to be hard for offenses.
I do,
what were you saying?
I just think like so much is on the offense going into this season, and I feel like that's where everybody's expectations are. I think this defense is going to be much better than people think. They were sending it.
I think so too. Looking at that depth chart, it's like they're really serious. But Tyler does bring up a good point. They're going to be tested in a way more consistent basis than they're used to this year. And we'll see how they handle it. I'm cautiously optimistic because they really, I think, pressed the right buttons this offseason.
I totally agree. My hot take is that Tank Dell is easily the most productive wide receiver out of this group by like a decent amount. Like he 1,200 plus yards, 10 touchdowns, over 80 receptions, and he adds a little bit of versatility. I think they give him about 13 to 15 carries too in this offense. Could get a rushing touchdown or 2. I mean, for fantasy purposes, I have him as my wide receiver 12 overall. Nico is wide receiver 23, and Diggs is wide receiver 37. But they all have 7 or more touchdowns. They all have over 800 yards. So, like, they're cooking. I just think Dell will be the most productive one of the group. And then my game of the year for them is Houston versus Kansas City in Week 16. This could be like a one-seed determiner, depending on how everything goes. I mean, not with my potential record for them, but obviously I could be wrong. And like this has the potential to be a big-time type of game. So that's
I feel like ascending teams like this always have to beat the big dog to like prove you belong at the table, kind of thing. I mean, that's what the Bills had to go through. Nobody took Josh Allen seriously until he came knocking on some of these big team doors, and like that's just the step that you have to take.
Yeah, I mean, he had the Chiefs that 13-second year, and then the defense just threw it all away. But yeah, no, I think like it happened with you guys last year when you guys played Kansas City. Kansas City was not Kansas City, Cincinnati. They were on their run. Like Burrow was like finally healthy again. They looked good. They won a couple games in a row, and then Houston came in there and like slapped them in the face. We were all like, "All right."
That was the Noah Brown game.
Yeah,
that's always how I'll remember that game. That one Noah Brown game. All right, Noel, what do you got?
All right, so I got them going 11-6 this year, just kind of riding on the same timeline of this is a very tough schedule, and if you want to see them make a big time jump to a 13-4, like a 14-3 big time season, it's not going to happen just quite yet because they're going to have to go through a bit of tweaking everything with some of the additions that they made. I mean, Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon being added into your offense, those are 2 big-time players that you've added in. So try to get comfortable with them and be okay in your system. I think it'll take a year, but 11-6 is still pretty good in year 1 with with this level of star power. I think your most polarizing player, and this might be a bit crazy, I think it's CJ Stroud, just because he's going to have a ton of pressure on him now because of how he performed last year. And everybody's like, all right, CJ is the captain of the ship. We want him to win games for us. The ball flows through him. I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on him, and Texans fans could be very, very upset with him if they don't see, a deep playoff run out of him in year 2 with all the additions that they made. I mean, you don't go out and you pick up the guys that I mentioned and not be expected to make a deep playoff run immediately out of the gate. Those are win now moves, and that's what everybody's going to want to see, and that's why I got Stroud in that spot. My hot take, I think Joe Mixon's going to have a better productive season than Stephon Diggs. I think Joe Mixon's going to want to establish himself in Houston as RB1 for that team, and I could see him having another heavy receiving and rushing equal season, to the point that, Diggs is competing with Tank Dell and Noah Brown and these other guys, to where I don't see Joe Mixon having much competition with Dameon Pierce. I think he could take off and get a few steps ahead of him. So Joe Mixon with the big year is my hot take. And then I also had for my big game is week 16 with Kansas City. I agree 100%. That could easily be the game that is coming down to, all right, who's going to be 1 through 3 of the AFC at the top, and who's determining where they're going to be. And a big win in week 16 would definitely, I think, push them above Kansas City in a certain way, depending on Kansas City's record. But yeah, so big things ahead for the Texans. For me, I mean, obviously, I know Louie would love to see a Super Bowl banner dropped in Houston. I don't think they're quite there yet, but I think they're going to be a very, very dangerous team in the AFC.
And there's time. Like, I could go forever on this topic, but if you look at the way they structured all these contracts, there's going to be 2 teams built around rookie CJ Stroud.
Yep.
There's all these guys, Diggs, Mixon, Danielle Hunter. All these guys are on 2-year contracts. So this year and next year is this team, and then the next 2 years is going to be a totally different team. And they're going to push for banners both of those cycles very heavily.
For sure.
I love it. One thing I will say, Nolan, that you said Noah Brown's name instead of Nico Collins, and that one got me a little bit. Come on. Noah had a couple big blow-up games.
Best receiver on the team, Noah Brown. All right. We do need to pick up the clip a little bit here, gents. We're already almost at the halfway mark. We're not even through half this division. So, Titans, keep it short and sweet.
Here, I'll start us off here, kind of go back in our reverse order. Titans for this year, I got them going 8-9. Another team I could see being, right near the win-loss number being about the same. I definitely think they'll improve a little bit from last year, but not by much. Will Levis going to be in the same situation, I think, as CJ Stroud. All right, here's the keys to the team. We're putting all of our confidence in you. We showed it last year when we put Tannehill on the bench and you're running the show. I think he's either going to make some Titans fans happy or he's going to piss them off. Well, 8-9, I think, will piss them off. So that's polarizing. Tony Pollard breaking 1,000 rushing yards is my hot take. I don't think he gets over 1,000. I think he could get near it, but my hot take is that he maybe does break it. And then for big game, I have week 15 versus Cincinnati. I think that could be one of those games where you see Tennessee for some reason have an incredible game, good redemption game, and get a game back in the win column for them and get them a little bit closer to that 500 mark.
That was nice.
Who's next?
Go ahead. You'll go next, Tyler. We'll just go back around. You're muted. Okay, I'll go next then. So I've got this team going 6-11. I am not a believer in the way that they built this team. I feel like it's really young in some places and then way too old in others. I think the receiving core is way too old. I have concerns about the lack of development of Treylon Burks. So 6-11 is kind of where I have this team pegged right now. My most polarizing player is Justin Simmons. a couple years ago was widely considered one of the best defensive players in the league, like ascending into that, premium DT conversation. There's still some question marks for me on this defensive line and on this defense as a whole, aside from L'Jarius Sneed. And so I think the question becomes, can Simmons carry the weight of this defense? Is he that guy? And I think they're going to ask themselves that. Is he worth this money that we're giving him, depending on how this team and this defense ranks? My hot take is that this is the worst offensive line in football. That's my hot take for the season. The left side of this is super young. You've got a sophomore at left guard and a freshman, if you want to call him that, like year 1, year 2 on the left side. And then the right side of this line is just scrubs. They don't even have a center listed on their depth chart right now. Like, if you go look at the team's website, there's nobody listed at center.
Where did Lloyd Cushenberry go?
I think he left in free agency, didn't he?
I thought they signed somebody big at center.
Maybe. I mean, I'm looking at this. I'll try and find the most recent one. Like, this doesn't look super recent, but there's just a lot of concerns for me. Like, you're not going to recognize a lot of these names on the right side. Obviously they're trying to protect Levis's blind side, but I think rushers off that other end are going to tee off all day long. And I have them. Oh, the best game on the schedule. That's my last thing here. Okay. I don't really know how to match this up either, because I don't know if I like their offense or their defense. I'm going to say that their best game is going to be probably their best nail biter game against kind of like a middling team. So I'm going to have like the Titans and the Chargers, or the Titans and the Vikings kind of as my best game. I think those will be other teams in very similar arenas. You'll have a good matchup. Titans fans will maybe see some potential there against what I would consider non-elite defenses. The Patriots might get there, depending on how they develop, but I don't think the Vikings will have an elite defense this year. So,
all right, I'll go next. I have them going 7-10. They start out the season 2-8, and then their schedule kind of softens a bit later. And I have them going like 5-2 towards the end of the season. My most polarizing player is Tajay Spears. I don't really agree with the Tony Pollard signing. I think that he's a good player, but like, if you're gonna let Derrick Henry walk, it's because you have Tajay Spears like kind of ascending into the role of your number one running back, and now like you're going to take years off of his workload that you could be getting more from him than put it on Tony Pollard. I just feel like he could have ascended with this roster, and he still could. I think that he's the better of the two backs, and like they're going to be leaning on the run game, even with this new offensive coordinator, new head coach, and Brian Callahan. One pushback on the offensive line point: Brian Callahan's dad is one of like a really renowned offensive line like coach, so he might be able to get a little bit more out of this group. But the collection of players, I do agree, aren't very good. Bottom 5 in the league, most likely. My hot take is that the Titans won't have a 1,000-yard receiver. None of their players will reach 1,000 yards.
Like a couple 750, 800 guys.
I have Hopkins with like 920, and I have Ridley with like 940, and I have Boyd with like 700, and then the running backs I think combined for around 600, and Chig has about 700 yards. Like, it's just too spread out. Like, I feel like they have enough guys that are good. None of them are really an alpha. Like, Ridley is good, like, but he is 29, and like, I just don't see him consistently winning target share from DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. No, like, they don't have a Jamar Chase on this roster. They have a bunch of T. Higgins type of players at this point in their career. I mean, obviously Hopkins once upon a time was the most dominant receiver in football. But yeah, age is just a thing with this receiving core, so I don't see any of them cracking 1,000. But they have a lot of big names, so I think that's why it's the hot take. And then my favorite game of the year is Tennessee versus Cincinnati in Week 15 in the Tyler Boyd, Brian Callahan revenge game.
Revenge game,
like it. All right, Bahookie.
All right,
when there's getting teams, you go revenge game. I feel like.
Mm-hmm. I was lower on this team than most of you guys. I said 5-12. And I was Tyler kind of alluded to like one of the main reasons why. I was looking at this schedule, and the first half of it is absolutely brutal for them. My best game was the week oneer at Chicago because you get two young quarterbacks here. It's a week oneer, anything can happen, and there's all hope isn't lost yet. But then following that up, you've got the Jets, you got the Packers, you got the Dolphins, you got the Colts, you got the Bills, you got the Lions. Leash. And then you got the Patriots, the Chargers, the Vikings, and the Texans. So it's like maybe it gets a little better, maybe not, but
maybe.
So yeah, and then you guys also kind of led me into my other one. My most polarizing player here is Treylon Burks, because we've got the like. He's still on his rookie deal, but like he's like from the last regime, and you like that. Those are always like top trade candidates. I know like when Brandon Beane came in, we traded away all of the guys who were on rookie deals from the Rex Ryan era because you can still maybe get some sort of value from them. So I think we alluded to the guys ahead of him are all basically pushing 30 or like 29 or 30 with D Hop, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, all guys who have accomplished things in this league. How much more do they have left? I think we wait and see if Treylon Burks breaks out in the first half of the year when they're probably losing, and if not, maybe he's getting moved if they can get anything for him. And my hot take is that Tennessee is going to be looking for a new quarterback in 2025.
Yeah, you have to think just on that point. If this goes badly enough, first 8 games, and they're just like, he's not the guy, how many pieces they could feasibly move before the deadline. Like you could trade Hop to a contender. You could trade some of these defensive pieces to a contender. Like at some point, you just have too much.
Absolutely. But we were talking about them last trade deadline. I remember on our trade deadline show, all three of us chose Titans, and none of those ended up getting traded. I know Danico Autry was the one I chose, ended up signing with your Texans. But I more or less foresee a similar scenario here. But anyways, we want to just roll right into the next one.
Do it. Let's go Jags.
All right.
Let's do the Jags, and I would never cheer for the Jags. I'd rather drag my butt cheeks across a hot glass.
I'll go Jags. I have the Jags and Colts kind of is that same kind of middling profile. I had my hot take is the Jags doing exactly what they did last year and choking away a potential playoff spot in the last week of the season for the best game at Indianapolis. And so I have Indianapolis winning that last game. Maybe it's for a playoff spot. Maybe it's not. But I have the Jags kind of like being in that like playoff contention and then just kind of falling apart the last couple of weeks. Most polarizing player, Gabe Davis. Guy, we know what he did in Buffalo, and he looks like he earned the right to be paid by somebody, and I'm happy that it's not the Bills that are paying him.
Word. I've been going 10-7. I feel like it's kind of a similar thing. They have a good roster, but that this kind of leads into my hot take. It's Trevor Lawrence has a Dak Prescott type of season because this defense will suck. Like, the defense is not going to be good. They're going to have to win shootouts, and they're going to have to throw the ball, and they're going to have to score points because the secondary is fucking Swiss cheese. And they drafted Trayvon Walker as an edge rusher, pass rusher, who really isn't that great at rushing the passer in the NFL. And Josh Allen, that's not his skill set really either. He's kind of a more move piece that you can kind of do a little bit of everything. They don't really have a designated pass rusher, get the quarterback type of guy. They do have good linebacker play, but that's about all they do really well on defense. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have to step up and earn that $55 million that he got this offseason. My most polarizing player is Christian Kirk, who kind of had an injury-riddled season last year. They brought in Calvin Ridley, and everybody kind of forgot about him as an option. But like, let's not forget, like he's one of the players that kind of changed the wide receiver market money wise. Like he got that fat deal. A lot of people laughed at the Jaguars, and he came out and played really, really well for 2 seasons. And last season he was hurt. So I kind of expect him to come back fully healthy as the main target getter and the wide receiver 1 for this team and perform again. My favorite game for the season is Jags at Buffalo, and Buffalo's kind of wanting revenge for that.
They always give us problems, whether we're good or bad.
It's always a good game. It's always a good game. So I'm just kind of excited to see that one. That one's one of the ones I marked on their schedule for sure. Go for it, Louie, and then Nolan, you can finish it out and start the next one. So we can start the Chiefs after this.
So my Jags record is right around Bahookie's. I'm 8-9 as well. I think the defense again is just concerning for me. I didn't like their secondary last year, and they didn't change it at all. So
they got worse. They lost.
Got worse than anything. I have this really concerning, like just watching the AFC South so closely. I'm very concerned by how well quarterback play is developing and how poorly most of these teams are positioning their secondaries. Like it was a really good corner draft and really deep at receiver. All this corner talent fell, and the Jags taking Brian Thomas Jr. Like I like Brian Thomas Jr., but also every single corner was sitting on the board at that pick, I think. So
yeah, you could have gotten like Terry Arnold.
In Detroit left out hard.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see some of the repercussions of that when these teams get 35 points dropped on them on average weekly. I think that's what happens to the Jaguars. I have ETN as my most polarizing player, mainly because kind of aligning with what Tyler said. I think this team is going to be a big shootout team, and I don't think they're going to be able to design plays around ETN the way that he needs to sustain his production. Not that he's a bad player. He's schemed, like he's a focal point of this offense right now. And I just think as they fall behind because of this defense, he's going to be less and less of an emphasis in this offense.
Can I make one quick point to that?
Yeah.
When I just did the player profile for ETN, let me just pull it up real quick because I have something that kind of counteracts that. So when ETN was being used at his most last year, he had 25 touches in weeks 1 through 8, and they were 6-2 in those weeks. And then he got knocked down to 18 touches a game, and they were 3-6 during that stretch. So I don't know if that helps or hurts your argument, but I felt like that needed to be said. When they use ETN a lot in the pass game and in the rush game, they were winning more games. When they kind of saddled back and like gave him a little bit less of a workload, that's when they went on their skid.
It's hard to run when you're down 14, and I think they're going to be looking down that barrel a lot, which leads me to my hot take, which is I think Trevor Lawrence is the most sacked quarterback in the league next year because of how many passing hero ball situations he's going to be forced into by how bad this defense is. That's kind of the focal point of all this. Jags defense will not be good.
Yeah.
The best game on the schedule for them, I personally think it's going to be them and a Colts matchup. Take your pick of which one. I think it's going to be that will be the fight to show who's still contending in the AFC South and who's going to be put behind the wheel for a couple of years. Like if the Colts can get over this hump with Richardson, they're going to be the clear 2. If they can't get past the Jags and can't take the number 2 spot, then I think they'll be relegated, for another couple of years.
Relegated to the college football league?
To the seller of the AFC, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you. No, go for it, then you can start the Chiefs.
Yes, sir. So I'll go quick here because we're pushing time. 10-7 for the Jaguars is where I've got them. I think they could be right there along with Houston for most of the season if they can do it correctly and they can put things together. Trevor Lawrence is my polarizing player. Same situation as a CJ Stroud type deal where, all right, you signed for a ton of money and you got a ton of pressure on you to continue to produce. And so far, Trevor Lawrence has fallen flat on his face as far as producing, being a consistent playoff quarterback because he's made it a couple of times already, hasn't done it. So Trevor Lawrence, My hot take kind of is a opposite end of what you said, Louie, with ETN going to be struggling with getting production. I said he's going to have the same receiving yards as Gabe Davis. I think there's going to be a ton of screen plays, jump down passes to have to just get the ball out. And with that, I think he's elusive enough. Hey, maybe he does rack up enough receiving yards because Trevor Lawrence won't have time to throw the ball deep, and you dump it down to him, and he produces. And then big game, I have Week 13 versus Houston being the big one, but that is where I have Houston pulling away, is Houston winning that game, and then it'll be the end of the division race. Houston will walk away with it, and it'll be A-okay. So, yeah, that's my Jags.
Go
now,
for
for the back-to-back defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, back-to-back, going for three-peat, never been done before. Right, Tyler?
Never
been done. Not going to be done this year either. No shot.
13-4 for the record for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're going to have a really productive year. Rashee Rice is my polarizing player. Man, oh man, does he have some heat on him right now? And he's got a lot of pressure to go out there and perform and, kind of bury all the crap that he's gotten himself into. So I have Rashee Rice. Hot take, Hollywood Brown is the leading receiver by 1,000 yards or more. I think he has the chance to be an insane receiver for Kansas City. You get a chance to play with Patrick Mahomes, and I think his production level skyrockets to what people were expecting him to do in Baltimore or even with Kyler Murray in Arizona, and he just didn't quite get there.
You think he's going to be 1,000 yards more than the closest next receiver?
So
Yes.
you're saying
okay. I just want to make sure I understood it right.
Correct.
1,000 yards more than Travis Kelce?
I think so.
So
All right.
2,100 yards.
That's a hot take. I like it.
I just want to know if we're ghost pepper. That's like ghost pepper hot. I like it. All right.
And then for big game, I actually have Week 7 against the 49ers right after the bye week. Andy Reid is a big-time come out of the bye week and look great type coach. He's one of the best in the game at it. And so to get San Fran right after the bye week, that is a tough matchup to try to plan for. But, hey, if you're going to be the best, you got to beat some of the best and continue to do that. So why not beat San Fran right out of Week 7? I think that's going to be a big game.
Word. I have them going 13-3 as well. My most polarizing player is Trent McDuffie. L'Jarius Sneed was traded in the offseason. He is now a Tennessee Titan. So McDuffie moves up to that top-tier cornerback spot. And that cornerback does so much in now I'm blanking on the defensive coordinator's name. What's his name?
Spagnuolo.
Yeah, Steve Spagnuolo's defensive game plan is pretty predicated by having that number one lockdown cornerback. You need that type of dude in that type of system. So he's going to really need to step up and prove again. Even though I think he's a hell of a player, I think he's a top 10 cornerback. But it's kind of like the Derek Stingley stuff. You need to go out there and show it again with no help and be that dude. My hot take, just to kind of clarify, I have Hollywood Brown getting 944 receiving yards this year. I do have Xavier Worthy having more. I have him going over 1,000 with 8 touchdowns. That's my hot take. So
see, I had him going negative 64 yards, so that Nolan's prediction was correct.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have him doing 1,000. I have Hollywood with 950 pretty much. I have Travis Kelce with 1,100. Rashee Rice with close to 900 as well. So the receiving core is going to do much better than it did last year. It's so much more elevated than it was last year. Then my game of the year is Cincy versus Kansas City in Week 2. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, baby. That's the matchup. That is what it is. That's probably what kids these days are going to be looking at to what we looked at Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. That's that matchup. So
yeah.
Go for it, Louie.
I've got the Chiefs cooling a little bit. I think I'll probably have the lowest record here by a little. 11-6 is where I have them. Just a bit of a down to earth, come back to earth season. I think Marquise Brown is the most polarizing player. I'm not nearly as high on him as Nolan, but I do think he's a good player. I just think he has to carry the weight of being wide receiver 1 while Rashee Rice is suspended. And so with, Xavier Worthy's going to be brand new to the league those first 6 weeks. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on him and on Kelsey. And obviously Kelsey's going to get the double looks, which means you have to win your one-on-ones. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to be 1,000-yard receiver this year. My hot take is, for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' tenure, they will not reach the conference finals. The conference championship, I'm sorry. I think they get knocked out just barely in the divisional round. I just have to believe that with the ascending AFC talent, eventually this team doesn't have that one magic moment. Like, somebody else is going to steal it. Somebody else has to take this crown, not at the last moment. And I think this is the year where some of these teams are loading up for another big push, and the Chiefs just can't quite get over the hump this year. For the first time in Mahomes' tenure, I had their best game as the Bengals game as well.
Cool. Real quick, Nolan, Hollywood Brown would have to catch 85 passes and average 25 yards a catch to have 2,125 receiving yards. 85 with 25 per catch.
You said you said hot take. You didn't say how hot it had to be. You didn't give me a temperature cut off.
I'm just kind of putting it in perspective. That's
great. My perspective is outlandish. We'll just have to
All right, I'll run it now. Louie, I was hovering around 11-6, 12-5 here. I decided to go with 12-5 because this division is matched up with the NFC South, and that I think, going through a lot of these, not only the Chiefs but the other teams, like, I think that there's a couple instances where you play like 1 or 2 NFC South teams, and that's going to be the catalyst for you to go on a run and win a couple
right games.
Literally, it matters. It's in college football, so I went with 12-5. I had 11-6, and I scratched out one with 12-5. Mostly to support my narrative. I have this team as the third seed, with the Texans as the 2 seed, the Bengals as the 1 seed. I think the Bengals have by far the easiest schedule this year, and the Chiefs are still the Chiefs here. And for me, it's like, it's one of those, it's hard to stay hungry when you've been fed kind of situations. We think, I don't know, they already went back to back, and they do want to be the first team to three-peat, as Nolan mentioned. But anyways, moving forward to most polarizing player, the easy one here is Rashee Rice. So let's move on to the next most polarizing player in that receiving room. That's Kadarius Toney. And then also Sky Moore. So I thought all of those guys were kind of polarizing in that room, and then you have Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. They had a bunch of no name guys last year, and they won a Super Bowl, but I don't know what to make of that wide receiver room. My hot take, I've already pretty much said this, basically the same as Louie, divisional and done is what I said. Best game, I have we mentioned it earlier, that game against Houston in Week 16. I think that's going to be a really, really big one, and I have Houston winning that game.
Word, go for it on the Chargers.
So the Chargers I have right behind.
Real quick here, guys. So we're coming up on the hour mark. So what do you guys think about cutting it here after Chargers, and we'll do the rest of the AFC West next week to start, and then the next division?
I don't mind running like 10 minutes over if you guys don't, so we can get this done.
Okay, we can keep clipping. Go ahead.
So I had the Chargers just a little bit behind at 11-6. I have this team as a playoff team. I think that my 3 teams who were going to make the biggest flip this year, I think are all decently obvious, at least to me, are the Bengals, the Jets, the Chargers. I expect all 3 of those teams to really rise in the AFC this year. For various reasons. I think that it's probably going to look a little bit different than we're expecting with Jim Harbaugh, but Jim Harbaugh gets results quick in every scenario that he's been in. And I feel like it would be foolish to not expect him to do that. And again, this team's matched up with the NFC South. I think that they're probably good to get one against the Chiefs. But I still can't pick this team to come out and win the division in the first year. But I can expect them to be of playoff caliber and give teams problems. And my hot take is they're that super wild card team, that team that like really nobody wants to play going into that first round. And like a team that's really looking hot. What they'll do in the playoffs, I don't know. Most polarizing player, kind of along in the same vein as Traylon Burks. I went with Quentin Johnston here, another guy who could be a trade deadline candidate. They didn't really address that much in the receiver room though. I mean, who's their number one receiver? Probably like Josh Palmer.
Lad McConkey, baby.
Yeah, Lad McConkey, who's probably playing.
Brandon Rice.
Who they got in it was like the 6th or 7th round.
It's an open depth chart, man. He doesn't have anybody to battle through. Quentin Johnston's freaking beat cheeks.
Yeah. So big prove it year for him. And best game. I've noticed week 8, November 3rd. There's a lot of really good games that week. I've noticed is like my games of the week. But at Cleveland, I feel like in November, like for a team that's like trying to be a playoff team, that's just like a tough trip going into that defense on the road as a West Coast team.
Word. Nolan, go for it. Then I'll go. Then Louie can finish and then start the Raiders.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going complete opposite end of Bahookie here. I think this Chargers team is going to be putrid, and I have them at 6-11. I'm sorry.
That's what we're here for. I
don't see the immediate production happening that Jim Harbaugh's used to. I mean, yeah, did he do well in his time with San Fran? Absolutely. You saw Super Bowl berth against his brother, the Harbaugh Bowl of old. But I don't think they're going to be quite at that level or anywhere near it quite yet. Justin Herbert is my polarizing player. Same situation. Big money. Put all the pressure on him yet again. Another year of that, of everybody expecting him to try to be head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes. I don't see it. But he's still going to be productive, but I think he has a lot of pressure on him. Lad McConkey, Rookie of the Year race candidate for my hot take. I don't know if that's a huge hot take, but it's enough of one because, I mean, who knows what Lad McConkey does. It's either really good or nothing. And so that's my hot take. And my favorite game for this team is the Week 5 bye week where they get to rest. And maybe the Harbaugh Bowl, depending how these teams look by Week 5.
Word. Nolan, I'm a little bit similar to you. I have them going 7-10. This team always had a shitty coach, but a bunch of weapons. Now they have no weapons and a great coach. So, I just feel bad for Justin Herbert. Like, it's like 2 ships passing in the night being like, oh, well, we missed each other. This year, I just don't see them being a fully competitive team, partly because of my 2 polarizing players, Derwin James and Joey Bosa. Both of them are top of the class type of players if they're healthy. But that's a massive question is if they're healthy. They haven't been healthy over the last 3 seasons of their supposed prime in their career. And they're getting older, man. Like, this could just be an old defense that just doesn't have it anymore if these guys are injured. I know Harbaugh thrives on running the ball in defense, but, like, you have to have players, and it's like creating your system. He just got there. He's trying to plug in his own dudes, and, like, they just don't have all those dudes yet. My hot take is Kamani Vidal takes over this backfield. Remember his name. This kid's going to be good. Like, he's going to be, like, the next Austin Eckler type of player. I should have used that for the next team. But it's okay. He only has to overtake a broken J.K. Dobbins and a 400-year-old Gus Edwards. So, like, I think he'll be fine to just, like, he kind of reminds me of Antonio Gibson, too, out of the backfield. Like, he used to be a receiver at Troy. He's switched over to running back. He has that, I think he hits the threshold of 215 pounds as well. That's a big number for running backs. If they had 215 pounds, like generally they're not all of them, obviously, but like that's a qualifier for longevity and sustainability at the running back position. And we know Harbaugh is going to run the ball a shit ton, and they did beef up their offensive line by getting Joe Alt. So I just think Goodall takes off on that. And then, yeah, my best game of the year is the Harbaugh Bowl. Like the rest of the schedule just is meh to me. Louie, go for it and start us off with the Raiders.
Okay, I've got the Chargers going 8-9. I'm kind of in the middle of you guys. I think the most polarizing player here is Gus Edwards. Can he do this? Keep his production outside of the Ravens scheme? I don't think so. I think they try to run the ball, and they have one of the worst rushing attacks in the league as far as yards per carry average goes. My hot take is called Control Alt Delete. And I think the fact that they took Joe Alt in the first round makes Justin Herbert want to delete himself off the face of the earth. Because this is going to be another year of Herbie hates himself to me. It's been a tragic tale for him so far. I don't think that changes. And I think he is ranked outside the majority top 10 quarterbacks by the time the season's over. I think his stats suffer. I think their success suffers. And I just don't see a good path forward for him as a superstar quarterback in this offense. And I have their best game as the Browns. So rip Justin Herbert, go to the Raiders. The Raiders, I think, are going to be one of the worst teams in the league, vying for that number 1 overall spot. I've got them at 3-14 on the year. Tyree Wilson is my most, I think that was his name, is my most polarizing player. They took him incredibly high last year. Had an injury concern, supposed to play edge. He looks like a defensive tackle right now. They're talking about moving him to the defensive tackle position to play inside alongside Christian Wilkins. There's a lot of question marks as to what's going on with this team. My hot take, that's not a hot take, is I think a superstar gets traded at the deadline. It might be Adams. I think it could also be Crosby. That would be a really unpopular move, I think, and I would be shocked. But if they can pick up a first rounder, I don't know if you get a first rounder for Devontae Adams in 2024. You might get a first rounder for Max Crosby. So I think if they're really going to break it down and reload, and they know they're going to have the first overall pick, maybe you move some of your really productive guys while you can still get a premium. And as far as their game of the year goes, Nolan, you kind of stole my thunder on this. I have the bye week. I don't think there's going to be one good game on the schedule for this team. Maybe the Broncos, who will also be almost unwatchable in my opinion. And you can have the worst game on turf. Yeah, I can't say enough bad things about this team. I think it's going to be horrible.
I pretty much agree with you. I have them going 4-13. I was just looking at the schedule, man. Like, I don't see a whole bunch of games that Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are going to win you, and like, I don't see it. Dylan Labe is my most polarizing player. This is the actual Austin Eckler comp. This dude had 70 receptions in like pretty much every year he played in college. He's a receiving down menace, and a lot of people love Zamir White, and yeah, he looked good last year, but I just don't think that he has earned full sway over that backfield share. And I think Labe is the type of guy who's going to work mad hard in training camp and just kind of work up that depth chart till all of a sudden you're like, oh, we have to get this guy the ball more. He's definitely somebody to watch. Maybe not in redraft leagues, but like if you're in dynasty leagues, snag him off the waiver wire or in the 4th round of your rookie drafts. I'm doing it in every single one. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't really care. I have 25 shares of him in my 60 leagues that I'm in. So he is my most rostered player at this point. Devontae Adams gets dealt the deadline was my mild take. Then my hot take is that Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins combined for 30-plus sacks. So I do think that's something that they've done right is that defensive line. They're going to be a problem. But their offense is going to be so anemic at times that, like, yeah, their defense is doing everything, but they might just lose games like 10-6, like the Patriots last year. And then my game of the year is Las Vegas versus Kansas City in Week 8. I guess like they beat them last year Christmas time. It happened. It sucks.
They do beat the Chiefs once a year.
Like there's that one random game that's really good for them, and like that's it. That's
where Patrick Mahomes throws a pick six against some scrub because he's got a high ankle sprain.
You mean Jack Jones, the dude who brought cats on airplane? All right, Bahookie, take the mic from me, please.
All right, so I was kind of on a similar track with some of your guys' stuff. I had a higher win total, not that much higher. I said 7 and 10. I could have said 6 and 11. I don't think this team is good, but I think that they are going to be good at making games ugly. And kind of like what Tyler was saying with
Just
that.
like my ex, you know what I'm saying?
But and Max Crosby was another one you pointed out. Attached to my hot take is Max Crosby Defensive Player of the Year, and then I wrote in all capital letters, certified sicko.
I like how Blake wrote it down in his notebook, then copied and pasted it and typed it on, or not copy pasted it, but typed it onto our show sheet. Love that from you, Bahookie. I love that.
You know what? You got to have consistency. But so attached to my hot take is I do have them doing the Raiders special, beating the Chiefs for some reason that doesn't make any sense, like the Dolphins used to against Tom Brady. It just happens sometimes. And most polarizing player here for me had to be Michael Mayer. Notre Dame tight end guy who I obviously was biased towards and high on going into this draft process. Now they bring in Brock Bowers. And I'm also a 12 personnel nerd, and so I guess that's like the silver line is I don't know what this offense is going to look like, but maybe they find a way to use both of these tight ends and Dylan Labe, as you were talking about, maybe this team turns out to be good at those low scoring ugly games. Not enough to actually be a legitimate team, but enough to like piss some teams off.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a point I meant to add real quick, is that I think the way they drafted is going to be why this team sucks for a long time, because yes, you took two great player prospects at two of some of the least important positions. And as my friend Bahookie always says, scared money ain't make no money.
Bro,
So
they flipped a coin for Brock Bowers and what, Carrion Arnold, right? That's what they said. We flipped the coin.
They took Brock Bowers, generational tight end prospect, when you already have high-value tight end on the roster, and then you take a center in the second with all these gaps on your roster. Okay. Go ahead, Nolan. Sorry.
Oh, no. You're good.
He loves this.
I'm kind of on the same line as Bahookie. They're not going to be good, but they're going to win some games that they have no business being in, and it's because of the players that you guys are mentioning, the Max Crosbys, the Christian Wilkins. They're going to make it ugly games, and they're going to keep it close because they are having defensive pressure on the quarterback or the opposing offense the whole game. And that is how they're going to stay close. They're not going to outscore teams by a ton, but I could see a lot of games coming down to field goals or final possessions for the Raiders simply because their defense in some ways can keep them in it. I have them at 6-11 on the year. And I mean, that's a very soft 6-11. It could go down by a couple too. Polarizing players, Davante Adams. I mean, you lose Hunter Renfrow, you move on from him, and you don't really add a ton to your receiving core. So, I mean, Adams has a ton of pressure on him to perform once again for a quarterback room that is not going to help him perform. And so I've kind of changed up my hot take here, and I said Brock Bowers is going to have more receiving yards than Davante Adams. I think that'll be the perfect scapegoat and the perfect way to say, all right, Davante, we're going to move you on for a couple first-round picks, and that'll be all she wrote for you here in Vegas. Who knows?
Couple first-round picks?
Wait, I'm being outlandish. I told you, man. I told you.
Outlandish.
It doesn't
A
have
couple
to be
first-round
true.
picks if they send him to the Chiefs, maybe.
I do
Couple
think Max
second-round
Crosby, like you get more than one first for him.
Max,
Devontae
yes. I think
Adams,
you get a first and a second for Max, depending on how much of the contract you absorb. I don't even know if you get a first for Devontae in 2024.
I'm not trading Max Crosby for a first and a second. Like I'll take that on the chin. We could just suck. Like
Yeah,
all right.
fine. Okay, 2 second round pick.
All right, Broncos.
But, big game of the week, or a big game that I picked. And I don't even know if this will happen, but maybe week 13 versus Kansas City. I'm in the same boat as you guys. Just that one weird time where the Raiders play way better than they were a couple weeks prior, and they go out and they surprise KC. And I think the Chiefs are going to be winning enough games by week 13 that they really don't care if they lose one to the Raiders. Maybe for their morale's sake, because you don't want to lose to a rival, but it won't be a big loss, but it'll be a big win for the Raiders. That'll be their Super Bowl.
Word. Hit us with the Broncos.
Yes, sounds good. So 7-10 for the Broncos. For me, I think they're, again, similar boat. Not great, but they could win some games if they can stay in it. Cortland Sutton is my polarizing player. I'm on the same boat as you, Bahookie, with that. Where I think he's also a under pressure receiver to try and perform with Bo Nix as his quarterback potentially. And it's going to be tough for him, and it'll be a rough ride. I have my hot take as Bo Nix winning Rookie of the Year, because why the hell not? Maybe he goes into Denver and
he could
falls out.
He could fit this system.
He could, and that's why it's a hot take, because it could happen, or I'm going to be terribly wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And then for big game of the week, just like the Raiders, week 18 versus Kansas City. Kansas City's probably resting their starters by week 18, and they're not going to give a single shit who's in that game. And Denver will probably win it because it won't matter. So week 18, Denver Broncos.
Can I go next because I got to hop?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I have this team going 4-13. I have them finishing second worst, I think, in the league, right behind the Raiders. My polarizing player is Javonte Williams. Used to be good, is now very not as good. I think the line's gradually getting worse. I think he's sustaining injuries, getting older. I think he has his worst season to date, and I don't think he's back with the Broncos next season. My hot take is called Nix the whole team. I think this is just kind of the end of this. I think this experiment's about to be over. I think you're talking about potentially Sean Payton being out. I think you're talking about a lot of these guys getting moved on from your Garrett Bowles, your Pat Surtains. Like you don't sustain superstars with a roster this bad. It's just not good business. I think all of that finally catches up to them. And I think their best game of the year, let me see what I marked. It's in preseason. Surprise. I think the best game for this is against the Cardinals in preseason. August 25.
That's not good.
That's about how watchable.
I actually have them going 2-15. So I think this is going to be the worst team in football. They have a really tough schedule. They play in a tough division who plays them well typically. I do have Javonte Williams as my most polarizing player. I'm kind of the opposite on where Louie was. I think that there is a chance for him to get back that old self, but it has to be this year, I think. If it's not this year, he might be cooked. Pat Surtain demands a trade before the trade deadline is my hot take. He's vocally not trying to play for this team and demands to be moved. And then my game of the year is Denver versus Pittsburgh in week 2, because it's week 2. Nobody really knows what's going to happen yet. You have hope and optimism. Also, they're going to lose this game because Russell Wilson's going to go off in their face and embarrass them. Go for it, Bahookie.
Yeah, I want to touch on Javonte Williams first. I didn't have him marked down here, but you guys touched on him, and I'm with you. He's another year off of the ACL here, and I'm cautiously optimistic. Him and Breece Hall are kind of on the same recovery on the Bill side. So is Von Miller, kind of and I remember seeing Brees in like week 1 against the Bills. He had this one run that like he like hit the hole but didn't have like the breakaway speed yet, and like it takes time for these running backs to come back from that. So I'm not hitting the panic button on Javonte just yet, but it is time to put up a shut up for him. Moving on for the record, I had the record higher than you guys did, and I don't feel very great about it. I said 8-9, and it could very well be lower than that. Looking at their schedule, the first part of the schedule is really brutal. I said they could absolutely come out like 0-6 to start here, and I think after like a really bad start, like the team's gonna like go on a run and start winning a bunch of games. They have Kansas City and Baltimore back to back in November, and I think that's like the most important part of their season.
That's the backbreaker.
Yeah, I said the game against Baltimore was the one that I like have most circled. Like they have to like, in my opinion, like get one good win against one of those teams to have like any sort of morale. But I think if they get stomped by both of those teams, then it very well could be a year like you guys are talking about where they're picking in the top 3 to 5.
Word. Anything else?
That's
it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We can wrap it up. We got through it,
guys. Yeah, I mean, we ran a little bit longer than typical. Appreciate the people who are watching, who still watch through this, to continue watching. Go make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Stadium Rant. Go check out our website, stadiumrant.com. We just actually got like 2 million views last month. So, like, contribute to the movement, be a part of the rant. You know, we're for the rant. Go follow us on Stadium Rant HQ on Twitter and Instagram. We're doing a giveaway for NCAA 25 and a jersey. So we're doing both of those. You win the giveaway, you get the copy of NCAA 25 and a jersey of your choice, college or pro. Doesn't matter if it's current or old, the jersey of your choice. So make sure to go check that out, follow the rules, and you'll be entered to win that giveaway. We give it out. I think it's the winner will be announced the 16th. So another 2 weeks from today. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say or plug? Awesome. Enjoy your night, guys. Thanks for watching Fifth Down Territory. We'll be back next week.